Carlos Pedraza is somebody who actually got his start in fan films. He's a movie producer on the independent circuit. He does journalism, and especially with his website AxaMonitor. But his start was in productions like Star Trek Hidden Frontiers and Star Trek New Voyages as a writer, as a producer. And he was part of what makes fan films. So for him to come in here and be the nicest person in the world, but say, hey, I got an issue with what you're doing, and we got to keep an eye on it. That's exactly what's happening here, because when it's all said and done, that more than $1 million were raised from fans, and that money's gone. I'm sure that there might be legitimate places that it went, but it didn't go into the very thing that people were giving money for, which was to produce a fan film. Because 3 or 4 years later, we're still waiting for that fan film to come in. So you flew cross country to Atlanta, and I'm assuming that you weren't received very well by the Axanar people.
Well, I believe in doing things above board. So I signed up. I bought tickets. I paid the full price, everything, to go. I used my own name because I wanted it very clear that I wasn't trying to sneak in. Mm-hmm. And so I bought the ticket. The transaction went through. Later that same day, I think, I got a note basically saying, we are refunding your tickets, and you are not welcome. And I, of course, had bought tickets not just to AxaCon but also to SphinxCon, because the way that the tickets were set up, you needed to pay some to both conventions in order to get in, and I had paid for a full admission to SphinxCon, again because I just wanted it really clear that everybody who should be getting money from my attending there should be getting money. And yeah. So the note that I received from Alec Peters basically said, "You're not welcome. All your money is being refunded," and it sounded like this was something that SphinxCon believed as well.
But they didn't.
They didn't. It turned out that this was not banning me from the convention, applied only to the AxaCon related events, and there were several panels and so forth that were open to people from both conventions, and I paid for and ended up paying for a SphinxCon admission that should have technically allowed me to attend those. But I talked with the organizer of SphinxCon for quite a bit, and we agreed that I would not do anything that would provoke anybody, and so I agreed to not go to any of those sessions, even though I had paid for them. Because again, my point for being there wasn't to be disruptive. I'm a journalist. I'm not supposed to be the story. I'm supposed to cover the story. And so, I wanted to at least be able to get a sense of how many people came to AxaCon.
And how many was that? And how many, what are we talking about?
Well, based on the counts I sent, I didn't see many more than about a dozen or so people at any single panel. They may have had, a couple dozen total over the course of the weekend. They had a number of events that took place on the Friday at the Axanar. Well, they call it a studio, but it's really a warehouse in suburban Atlanta, and where the bridge set for Axanar is housed, and they completed it so that people would be able to see a completed set, or virtually completed set. And so they had panel discussions there. They had tours of the set. They supposedly had their financial receipts and everything for all the years that Axanar has been in existence on display for people to be able to peruse and ostensibly be able to say, oh, these are all legitimate expenses, although they only, it was, several years worth of records. And
these weren't certified accountants that were looking at it either.
No,
so.
They were just, the people that they let into the convention. So, be that as it may, the point was that there were events that were held outside of the main convention, about 42 miles away, and a lot of people went because they wanted to see the sets, and so they did.
And did you talk to any of these people? Did you interact with anybody at all?
Eventually, yes. As the weekend wore on, I had never planned to go to the events that were at the studio because I just felt that would be courting too much trouble. And again, my interest there was not to provoke anybody into anything. So I explained this to both Alec Peters and to Dave Weiner, I think from SphinxCon, that I would be respectful and that I would behave myself. And so I figured the best way to do that is just steer clear of, where it's me versus, all the Axanar people all in one place. And so, so I kept my distance. I counted people going into sessions. To get some sense of just how many, was going on. I peeked in just to see how many people at the shared sessions that they had with SphinxCon, just to see how many people were there. And there were, some maybe an additional dozen of SphinxCon attendees who went to some of the, overlapping panel discussions. And then just mostly, kept my distance. I went to a number of the Honor Harrington panels. And learned interesting things about that. I went to the dealer room, ran into my old friend David Gerald, who was there as a guest of both conventions, and that was my weekend. And on Saturday night, I was sitting at the bar in the hotel, and finally, some of the Axanar folks came up, and one in particular, I think, is one of their production designers, Lee Quessenberry, came up, and we've obviously been on the opposite side of a lot of things, but he's always been a very decent guy to me, and I try to deal with everyone in a very civil fashion. Anyway, he came up, and we had a drink together and just chatted, and that I think kind of broke the ice. Other people came over. Jonathan Lane, who does Fan Film Factor blog and does a lot of, is in many ways sort of a virtual spokesman for Alec Peters and the Axanar project.
Yeah, he's like a propagandist, yes.
Well, I'm going to avoid using,
I'll use it for you. It's fine.
He came over. Steve Jepson, who played Admiral Slater in Prelude to Axanar, came over. And, we're all people who have had a lot of, virtual altercations online. And I was happy to see that, as so often happens, honestly, and this is part of the reason why I went. If it sounds like bragging, I'm sorry, but I think I'm a pretty charming person, and when people meet me, generally, they don't see anything to fear. They don't see a person they want to smack in the face, because I don't try to provoke people. I try to talk to them, and I've only ever wanted to promote dialogue amongst these, kind of warring factions. And, I felt like I should put my money where my mouth is, and I literally did. So I took my money and spent my money to get my mouth to Atlanta. And we had a very nice conversation on Saturday night. And then, the next day went back to our respective corners and everything. And I had just come out of the bathroom, and it was towards the end of the day on Sunday, and Jonathan Lane came to find me. Oh, I'd run into Alec a couple of times face to face, the two of us. The first time he came over and shook my hand, I shook his hand. It was kind of awkward because he kind of launched into, the things that he has the biggest beefs with me about. And I said to him, I really don't think this is the best, forum for us to discuss this. If you want to talk about it, I would love to sit down and talk about it. But of course, he's in the middle of a running convention, so he went off. That was fine. And then that Saturday night, he walked by a couple of times while I was speaking with Jonathan and Steve and the others, and Jonathan said something like, do you want to get a selfie with Carlos? And he said, a number of things would have to happen before that ever happened, which, I think that was okay and probably true. But anyway, by the next day, when I think it was pretty clear that I wasn't there to be disruptive or anything, and we were just close to the end, Jonathan came up and he said, Alec would like to invite you to attend the final panel, which was an Axanar trivia panel. And, so I went and I sat down and observed, and, I won a prize because I was the only one who knew. I tried not to participate, but it sort of blurted out. I think the question was something about, what was it, data learned in doing research for a hologram on behalf of Captain Picard, or what episode was it, or something like that. And anyway, people were guessing and guessing and guessing, and finally it came to me, and I just sort of blurted out, "Oh, it was Dixon Hill." where he played the 1920s film noir detective, and so I won a pack of Axanar coffee. So, which of course is one of the things I criticized in Axanar merchandising. So so I'm saying that as full disclosure, but also yes, I'm now the proud owner of a bag of Axanar coffee.
And I know at some point we're going to see all of this on AxaMonitor. I know you haven't had a chance, at least at the point where we're talking right now, you haven't had a chance to write it up yet. But I'm sure this is something we're going to be seeing pretty soon.
Yes, within the next few days. I had a very busy week work-wise when I got back, and so I haven't been able to, and I am working on a number of upcoming articles, big ones for AxaMonitor as well. So between regular work and the research I'm doing on those stories, I just haven't had a chance to write it all. Plus, I wanted to, I wasn't sure how to do this, honestly, because ideally, if I had gone, I would have just wrote about what I heard, but since I wasn't able to attend any of these, I was basically going to publish, what little few things I did learn and observed, and then a lot of blank space where the details would have gone. That was my plan.
Yeah.
A little cheeky, I admit. And then, after the discussion at the bar on Saturday night and being invited to join the final panel there, I started rethinking whether that was the way to go. Because I have to be honest, I have had a role to play in sort of this escalating war between people who support Axanar and people who don't. And even though I've tried to remain objective as a journalist, I can't deny that my coverage, which is pretty critical, has played some role in this. And so I didn't want to continue to feed into that after essentially an olive branch had been extended. And so part of what I've been thinking about over the past week is, okay, how do I cover Axanar in view of that? So that's, I think I have a sense of what that's going to look like, and that's what everyone will be reading in the next several days.
Do you like what you hear? Well, there's a lot more. You can listen to this complete episode and the rest of the Alpha Waves radio archive by subscribing to us at patreon.com/alphawavesradio. That's patreon.com/alphawavesradio. And hear brand new episodes of Alpha Waves Radio with me, Michael Hinman, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Odyssey, the free streaming service you can find at odysy1.com.